2022, and we are here for a board workshop. The time is 12 p.m. And today on the agenda, the purpose of the workshop is to speak about the reopening of schools. And the second will be the agenda review for the October 18th, 2022 regular agenda. Go to the order and then, of course, the adjournment. And I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Bernier and his team for the first part of this.
Well, the team gets into place, members of the board, public here gathered, as well as individuals watching us live or watching us later on videotape. Our hearts and prayers go out to this community. We've all been impacted by this storm one way or the other. And I will use a phrase pretty continually in the next several days about disproportional impact. We have areas of our community that seem relatively normal. Debris has been picked up, lawns have been raked, and things generally are back to normal in parts of the greater Lee County area. In other areas, debris still lies on the road. Homes and belongings have been brought to the curb, waiting for pickup. And your schools have been impacted the same way. Some of our schools are ready to reopen. We believe that in the short time, when we talk about our checklists and other things, so that we have a comprehensive list of what it needs to take for me to say a school is ready. You'll hear that in the presentation today, but please understand some of our buildings have been irreparably harmed. And I know I'm not making any mistake now because I've had multiple conversations with all of these principals, but certainly Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel, Caffaretta, those are the three that come to my mind immediately that will need temporary buildings first. We'll have to build in a location for those school buildings to go to school. And then additionally, we'll have to think long-term about how we rebuild those sites as well. So last week I held a press conference in this very room. And we talked about and with the community about why we needed to remain closed this week. And we set a goal. Goals are great things to have. We set goals all the time in our strategic plan. But we wanted to explain the why to the community of why we were closed October 10th through October 14th, which is this week. We also stated that we had a goal of reopening some of our schools on Monday the 17th and developing a plan for the others. So the students and staff, meaning the licensed educators and the support professionals that occupy those buildings, our bus drivers, all of our employees and our students would be safe. We discussed making sure we did this with grace and compassion. And what I mean by that is we know not all of our students are able to return, and we know not all of our employees are in a position to return. But we have to find a way forward so we can better assess our staff and our students' conditions. Getting them to school and being able to resource them is going to be an incredible opportunity for us to move this community forward. And when I say this community, I mean the community of the School District of Lee County employees and students. We gotta put our eyeballs on our babies. And this week we've been putting our eyeballs on our staff here at the district office. And we are learning even more about the impact. We are also learning this week about complexity and the complications associated with reopening our schools. We've already talked about the disproportionality, but we also need to recognize that there are other aspects of our system, like our choice system, which is complicated issues because children who chose to go to Cape Coral High School no longer reside in the zone 1, 2, or 3 that allow them that opportunity. They may be residing down in Estero and they are now further away, but we don't know that yet because our students have not checked in, not all of them. The other reason why we wanted some additional time last week was we wanted the county, state, and federal government to be given the time to continue to restore power and water. And we expressed at that time our confidence that our county, our state, and our federal government would not disappoint you, us, and you as citizens. And I'm proud to say, at this point, at this very moment, all of our schools but one, except the ones that have been irreparably harmed, have power. Pine Island has been provided with 2 generators, one currently to run some essential equipment, but another one that will be plugged in later this afternoon into the main electrical panel, which will turn Pine Island on. Air conditioning, safety, all the systems will be go there. Doesn't mean they'll all remain on when we turn them on. We learned that a week ago when Ms. Patrica was very poignant in saying we turned on something at an elementary school, and we found out water had impacted that particular piece of equipment. So you'll hear more about that as we go into today's presentation. We also asked for further time to assess our buildings, our staff, and our community's readiness to return to school. Today we're here to provide you a presentation related to where we think our status is regarding Monday the 17th and beyond. But I want to take a moment of privilege, if I may, Madam Chair, to say not only have we done all of that, we have relied on the help of countless districts who have supported this reopening. Our Caloosahatchee room has been a dorm room most of the week, from people as far away as Miami, Palm Beach, Broward, Polk, Osceola, Hillsborough, Pinellas, and they sent us trades, carpenters, plumbers, electricians. And the community needs to know that another group of people from as far away as Duval, St. John's, Volusia, Orange, Seminole, Marion County are responding as we speak. And we'll have a new group of roommates in the Caloosahatchee room to help us continue to do the work on each and every one of our schools. We have fed people. This people at the dais have been present to help hand out water and food to families in need. We'll continue to do that throughout the week. We're proud of the relationship the Miami Dolphins had with us at North Fort Myers yesterday. Great example of a young man educated in this community wanting to give back. We've asked for FEMA to help support our employees, and they have responded. We'd love a few more, but we're glad to have the ones that we have taking care of our families' needs, making sure that they file all the proper paperwork. On Monday, your superintendent started to get involved in the housing business. Talking with one of the board members here, we started thinking about all the people who are now self-identifying as needing a place to stay. I reached out as part of my entry plan, certainly built it a little faster than I thought I would, but we reached out to the faith-based community and we activated them in response to making some determinations of whether their congregations will be able to support an employee who doesn't have a home or a place to stay. I encourage everyone in this community to deep within your heart and realize these are professional licensed educators and support professionals and administrators. They have been background checked. They have no legal background. Otherwise, we couldn't have them in front of students. And the only thing that's changed about their life is a storm named Ian came through and turned them upside down. Second bedrooms, third bedrooms in homes that are available. You'll be hearing us announce in the hours ahead, contact lines and the ability to pair up with someone who needs your assistance.
Thank you.
Additionally, they have paychecks coming. They could support where they live and the residence that is given to them, even if it's just a spare bedroom, with their paycheck to help with, not to pay for, but to help with power, groceries, and rent. Unprecedented times, disproportionate impact, and now our moment to try to bring back some normality with the people who can help. I had someone say, this is Dr. Bernier and he's thinking about guilting us into returning. There is nothing further from the truth than that statement. We continue to support our goal of reopening by taking on all of these countless issues and complexities and hurdles that have been placed in our path. Today, you will receive information as our progress to date. And I remind everybody, it's Wednesday. We don't see a Friday. We just see Monday. Saturday and Sundays are working days, and I can't ask the team that'll present to you today, and the team sitting in the audience, and the team out in the hallways of this building resourcing our individuals and preparing for our staffs and our students to come back with mental health and counselor supports to do any more. But if as a community member you're looking for specific, definitive numbers and percentages, we might disappoint you today, but we will not disappoint you forever. We just don't have them yet. If you want to know exactly which schools will open today, we are still working on all the safety criteria, which I will mention ahead of the presentation. But if you want to see what the best thinking is and how we deal with a historic storm and how we return children back to the classroom in a safe, sensitive, and effective manner, you will see the beginnings and the potential of those plans and what is a realistic opportunity still for some of our schools to reopen on Monday and then to continue to roll out buildings as they become available. I want to read this because I think it's important, because we know we have to tell people sometimes 3 or 4 times, not because they don't want to listen the first time, it's just because they need time to process. So you hear it from me now, you'll hear it from the team, and then you'll hear it from me again. We put specific criteria in place to deal with that first phrase, safety. We need reliable power and a safe supply of drinking water in order to reopen our schools. Our schools, except for Pine Island, which will get reliable power today, and potentially will be restored back to the grid this week, we have reliable water and we have reliable power. We have worked an inordinate number of hours to seal our envelope. And a member asked me the other day, what does that mean? That means windows, roofs, exterior walls have been sealed up as best we can to prevent further water intrusion. Is the full roof back on the building yet? No, it is not. But we know that we can keep the water out of the building if it rains. We need working air conditioning. We need indoor air quality that has been assessed by an industrial hygienist. We need functioning fire alarms and intercom systems, because the rules related to Stoneman Douglas and safety and security in our school buildings have not been changed. Our schools need to be able to communicate with all the classrooms in a safe and reliable manner. Additionally, we must make sure schools have the ability to provide our students in attendance with at least grab-and-go meals. We are still in the process of assessing our kitchens and emptying refrigerators and freezers. We did it early to provide food to the community, but some were inaccessible, and now the food needs to be removed and restocked. And finally, we need a professional assessment that these things have been done and the building is safe to occupy. I'm proud of our team, but I also shared with them this morning and shared with them all along, we're reaching that critical hour where a decision will have to be made about a process moving forward. Some people will be very happy. Some people will think we have lost our minds. We are going to, however, today provide you what we believe is our best path forward for our boxes. Those are our schools. But that's all a school is. Its heart and its soul lies in its students, its educators, and support professionals. We have to find a way to bring our students back so that we can assess them, their needs, and begin to heal so that in the weeks ahead we can move to calculus, physics, reading, writing, and arithmetic. So I'm going to turn it over to the team. I thank them for their hard work, which was being worked on right up until very last minute today, because they laugh at me when I say these words. This is a developmental and transitional process. Things change for us every day. But again, I think about where we were the day after and think about where we are now as a community in the electrical grid. This community has rallied and done amazing things. I'll turn it over to my team. They'll give you a situational update on Hurricane Ian and our response to its disproportional damage and our plans for how we think we can reopen our schools with safety, sensibility, and effectiveness. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier, Chair Jordan, board members. Thank you for the opportunity to share and present this afternoon what we believe is the opportunity to provide an overview of the safe, sensible, and effective reopening of our schools for the school district of Lee County. I would name, as we begin this presentation, that this presentation will be uploaded to board docs after the board workshop so that the public will have view of this presentation as well. To think about this afternoon, you're going to hear safe, sensible, and effective. Those have been grounding words that really, what I would say with values that we really looked at as we thought about our plans to return our students and staff to our buildings. We'll walk through school building updates, many of which Dr. Bernier shared, but I want to present them again to the board. Our criteria to open, the housing resources that we've made available that we have begun to explore, reopening plans, as well as next steps. And so as we think about our school buildings and provide a school building update, as Dr. Bernier shared, power and water has been restored to all of our buildings. Pine Island, outstanding. LCEC is reporting that by tomorrow, they should have power up in that building. And as was shared, 2 generators are located on that campus as we speak to power that building, if that not be the case. Water has been restored to all of our buildings. As late as about an hour ago, Fort Myers lifted the boil water alert. So that is another piece of, as we continue to work through this developmental and transitional process. All shelters have transitioned out of our schools into, whether it be the Hurt Center, the sterile rec. Remediation projects are in process, and some have asked around what does remediation mean. Here in the top picture you'll see that is a picture at Lexington Middle School. The remediation to really a deep clean and mitigate the water intrusion that has come into a building. And many of those efforts are happening and have been happening over round the clock for the last 3-4 days as we look to get our schools ready. School kitchens have been assessed. There's a process of having them assessed to ensure that they're ready to reopen. And we've conducted transportation assessments around running routes with our buses to ensure they've been completed to ensure that buses are safe to return to the roads. We're also working with our emergency operations center around clearing debris at bus stops so our students do not experience any debris that is a challenge to load buses. As we shared last week, preliminary assessments have been completed in our buildings. Those preliminary assessments were done by school leaders and building supervisors. As a result of those preliminary assessments, a list of what we believe were ready and not yet ready school, opening of school lists were produced, and those lists were shared with you and community on Friday of last week after the press conference. That was our initial stage of identifying schools and where we thought their level of readiness is. And we began a tiered approach for both remediation and the maintenance support that are needed in our buildings to truly have them ready if we're going to meet the goal of opening schools beginning next week. And Dr. Bernier mentioned it's a source of encouragement to see the amount of Florida School District maintenance teams that have made their way. As we speak, there's 22 individuals driving from Volusia County to Lee County. They'll arrive tonight. I received a call from Marion County prior to this meeting. They're en route tomorrow afternoon and have committed to being here through Sunday to support us in reopening our schools. And this work continues to go on. As we've begun this process with our buildings, staff check-ins have been a critical component, checking in on our staffs to assess where they are, to really understand. We developed a process right here in our own district building, connecting our employees to FEMA, resources, insurance companies, and Lee County long-term recovery options for our employees. We launched a community and faith-based stakeholder engagement that began yesterday. Mr. Jared Eady and Dr. Adam Malloy are leading those efforts to really connect our community and faith-based stakeholders. We've been engaging with our union leadership as well to ensure that they too are at the table as we think about how we're developing these plans, as well as resources. I know that our teachers union has reached out to apartment complexes to talk about opportunities for employees and teachers to be able to be housed. And we've developed a clear communication protocol to ensure that we stay connected with our employees that need these resources, to ensure that we continue that conversation to ensure that their needs are being met as we're working through these most difficult and challenging times. As Dr. Bernier mentioned, we have a criteria to open. In order to do it in a manner that is safe and sensible, the criteria that's developed and outlined here: reliable power and water. Has the building been assessed by professionals? Has the building envelope been sealed? HVAC systems, fire alarm, intercom. Are they properly working and ready to receive students and staff? Indoor air quality is being assessed. Debris is being cleared on campuses. I want to be clear, as we talk about debris, it is quite possible as staff return to buildings and as students return and parents, they'll see debris on campuses, but there'll be identified areas of the building roped off, taped off to ensure that they are away from any type of dangerous situation or hazardous conditions, but they'll be removed. And as teachers potentially re-enter buildings this week, as you'll hear some of the unification efforts, they may see buildings that are still being worked on. Similarly, like they may see in July and August when they enter buildings and teams are hard at work preparing buildings to receive students on Monday. And food services, ensuring that our cafeterias and our kitchens have the ability to serve meals to our students, are the real key indicators. So when you hear the term ready to open, if we've identified, and you'll actually see numbers of the number of schools that we've identified potentially ready to open, and we'll share that in this deck as well. But that is pending the final sign off on these criteria to ensure what we believe is ready. This criteria will stamp the green light for a school to truly be ready to receive students and meet the goal of beginning school and opening on Monday. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to two fabulous leaders that I've had the opportunity to connect with and really work over some of this work, and Dr. Cooper McCoy and Dr. Spiro, who will take us through as we think about a number of the different particular pieces that we want to talk about. Dr. Spiro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramirez, and good afternoon, board members. Mr. Ramirez talked to us about a safe, sensible, and effective opening when it came to remediation and maintenance of the school buildings. Similarly, the academic services team and other divisions are taking that same approach as we look at reopening our schools for staff and students as well. And so what I'm going to talk to you about this afternoon are a number of strategies that we are implementing to help create that safe environment for our teachers prior to our students' arrival. Over the last 3 days in this building, we have had what we have called Days of Support. It's a concierge service where our district employees have had the opportunity to come into this building and meet with FEMA representatives as well as community agencies so we can help our employees take care of their individual needs so they can take a step forward as we prepare to welcome students back into our buildings as well. We need to make sure that our staff have that safe environment in their personal lives before they can concentrate on helping our students move forward as well. All of our schools will participate in some form of a staff reunification day prior to students ever coming back. And that is going to be an opportunity for our staff members who are ready to come back. You know, we talk about grace and compassion. Some staff members won't be ready to come back yet because of their individual needs, and that's okay. Those staff members just need to communicate with their supervisors. We want to make sure that they're safe. We want to make sure, are there resources that we can help point that individual to help them stand up so that they can get ready to come back when they are ready. But all of our schools will have some form of a staff reunification day. And it's a chance for staff members to get to see each other, to hug each other, to talk about their experiences, because everybody went through some form of trauma, whatever level, I would contend to you. And that talking about that and seeing each other is a first part of that healing that Dr. Bernier talked about in his opening. That's going to be important. So all of our schools will have that opportunity for all of their staff members. Similarly, for our families, we are going to have a family reunification day prior to the first day of students ever coming back into that building full time. It's going to be a chance for our families and our students to see their teachers, to see the people in the buildings that they love and care about. For some, there'll be a chance for students to see, where's my new classroom going to be? What is my new building going to look like? How do I get from the bus ramp to my new classroom? And so it's going to be an opportunity for schools to provide a sense of this is your new procedure in that building prior to the first day of having to walk into the building. Jessica Duncan's in the audience here, and I want to thank Jessica Duncan and Lori Brooks and our student services team, because they have been working on for well over a week now an onboarding plan to address the mental health of not only of our staff members but also our students when they arrive. And we're going to have a K-12 process where we're going to take our students to do a process, what they're calling a class meeting, to help address some of the trauma that our students have experienced well before we even think about teaching and learning. We want to create that safe environment for students. And so our teachers will go through a training prior to students coming back, and they'll know what to do at those class meetings with those students. And so in that first day or two when students come back, they'll have an opportunity to engage with students and really begin that healing process as well as a community. And this is a community, and that's why we really feel like the family reunification days are crucial, because it's not just the students, it's the family members, it's the extended families, grandmas, grandpas, uncles, and aunts. You know, this is all of us together taking that step forward when they're ready, taking that step forward. So those are some of the strategies that we are implementing before we even begin the first day for students. Dr. Cuban McCoy is going to share with you some of the work that we have been doing in academic services around the options that we have been exploring on how we will reopen schools and what does that look like. And so Dr. Cuban McCoy.
Thank you, Dr. Spiro. Our reopening options continue to change as additional data becomes available. Before you are the options that we've looked at. It's a combination of alternatives, and what we took into account were factors such as safety, sensible, effective, as well as will a school meet the criteria to open? We've identified a group of schools that have been termed ready to open schools. And that group of schools was initially developed based on the assessment of our principals immediately after the storm. However, it's important to note that in order for a school currently identified as ready to open, in order for that to actually happen, the school must meet the criteria previously shared by Mr. Ramirez. Later in this presentation, you'll get an idea of the number of schools that currently fit into that category. Another option we explored is something called combination schools. This option came into play as a result of some schools being heavily impacted. But one factor we kept in mind was we want to keep schools, the family, the community of a school together. We want to have that continuity of learning. We want schools that were together prior to Ian to remain together when that's possible. So we've had to take one elementary school, and in one case, 2 elementary schools, and physically relocate them to the building of a 3rd elementary school. And I'll walk you through that a little later. As a result of having some schools who may be ready to open, as well as some schools that are combined, our opening dates will take on what we call a rolling start date. Because the reality is, as we take a look at what's before us, we may believe today that a school is ready to be open on the 17th. However, if it doesn't meet that criteria that's been established, we may need to roll that to a later date, hence the need for rolling dates. Additional options we explored were double sessions, and double sessions present a unique set of challenges, and the primary challenge with double sessions turns out to be transportation. Another option explored is the use of FLVS Flex. This is different from Leave Virtual School. FLVS is the nationally recognized platform, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that. We know that students, families have been displaced, and so student enrollment plays a critical role here. Families may find themselves needing to change schools. So for example, originally I attended school in the West Zone. Based on the current circumstances, I now live in the East Zone. And my parents may determine that I want to exercise the option of attending a school that is closer to where I currently live. And so that is an option that we're also exploring for reopening. What's before you is the list as it stands today, and as Dr. Bernier mentioned earlier, this can change at any moment because it depends on if the schools presented on these lists meet the criteria to open. So here, this is a tentative group of sorts of the elementary schools that we've deemed ready to be open. Again, the caveat is, in order for any of these schools to definitely be open, it must meet the criteria previously shared. This is the list of middle schools that are currently ready, and our list of high schools. Let's talk a little bit more about the combined schools. When we think about how do we keep our community of learners together, it was important for us to take a look at schools that are in close proximity geographically to the school that is now displaced. So in the first example, you'll see that we have Fort Myers Beach Elementary, with a student population of roughly 80 students, and Sanibel K-8 with a population of roughly 289 students, and they're going to be combined with the host school of San Carlos with approximately 660 students. Please note that these numbers were the student enrollment numbers prior to the storm. So it is conceivable that these numbers may be slightly or significantly less than presented here. What does this mean if I'm in a combined school situation? So in the case of Fort Myers Beach Elementary and Sanibel K-8, it means that you're sharing the physical structure with San Carlos Elementary, but you're going to maintain your own identity as a school. So the students from Fort Myers Beach Elementary will be served by the teachers and staff who previously worked at Fort Myers Beach Elementary. It's the physical location that's different. Their administrative team will be the same. We've discussed the need for signage so that there's a sense of community when they arrive at San Carlos Elementary. We've discussed the need to have the telephone line that previously served that school community be the telephone line that now services that school community while they are at San Carlos Elementary, because we understand that all of those elements play a critical role in what's considered that community of learners. As we go through this list, you'll notice that Skyline Elementary and Hector C are split between two separate schools. Skyline is a pretty large elementary school, and as we looked at the capacity or the availability, again prior to the storm, we were unable to identify a single elementary school capable of holding all of the students from Skyline. So in an attempt to, again, maintain some semblance of community, we resorted to using the intermediate and primary options. So pre-K through 2 will be assigned to Patriot Elementary, and third through fifth grade to Pelican Elementary in this case. While not ideal, we understand that there are siblings who may be in the primary grades and a sibling in the intermediate grades. So we understand that there are some additional factors to work through, but in the interim, this is how we are providing an opportunity for students to be back in a brick and mortar situation and be able to engage in their learning. Hector C is going to be split between Hancock Creek Elementary, and we're currently working with local, let's just say our body of schools, and that's inclusive of our charter schools as well. We want to make sure wherever that space may lie, that they are capable of not just housing our students, but to be able to take on our infrastructure needs that we will have as well. So the goal here is to be able to finalize this by the end of this week. Additionally, we have Success Academy, and those students will be housed at Dunbar Community School. So what does the potential reopening look like, right? We talked about those schools that are termed ready to go, again with the caveat of meeting that established criteria. Once that occurs, those schools, as of this moment, will return on September 17th. That's the goal, for them to be able to return on September 17th. There could be factors that may cause a school we identify at this moment as a potential for the 17th. There could be factors that cause that to shift to the 19th or to a later date. Currently, we are anticipating that our combined schools could return on October 19th. In addition to the combined schools that I previously shared, we're looking at Cypress Lake Middle, Paul Lawrence Dunbar Middle, Early Childhood, and the Early Childhood Head Start all returning on October 19th. That's the goal. You'll notice on this slide that there's a date of October 31st. This is important to understand that Diplomat Middle and Lexington Middle, this return date applies to them reoccupying their physical structure. So what would occur in the interim for Diplomat and Lexington is those students will engage in Florida Virtual Flex, where they can have authentic instruction while the physical building is being restored. We believe that to be important as we think about the entire school family of the school district. And so we want to minimize any number of students not being engaged in some form of instruction. Students at schools such as Diplomat and Lexington would be required to be enrolled for a minimum of 14 days in the FLEX program. The staff at both sites, or any other site, should it be deemed necessary, would be required to participate in 8 to 10 hours of training, 2 of which will definitely be via Zoom. Again, we know this to be a nationally recognized platform, and so it allows our students to be engaged in instruction when that's been deemed necessary for us to transition to that point. One option we explored was double sessions. I mentioned earlier that there were a number of challenges with this particular option, but it was explored. If we were to engage in double sessions, these are the times we would use. So for example, if high school A were paired with middle school B, high school A would attend the session from 7 to 12. Middle school B would attend the late session from 1 to 6. As you can see, there's a 1-hour time difference between dismissal of the first session to the time the second session begins. Provides a number of different challenges, but it's something we had to explore because as the data changed, we were able to look at what options really are the most viable to take care of the needs of our students. I mentioned earlier that students and their families may be displaced. So one of the aspects that we've put into place to assist families with the options of re-enrolling at a different school closer to where they currently reside is we've pushed out satellite student enrollment offices across the community. So there are 2 locations identified in the West Zone, 2 in the East Zone, and 3 in the South Zone. Again, we kept our families in mind. These locations were identified to assist in areas that are the most impacted. The superintendent's recommendation for the reopening of school to meet that goal, with some of our schools potentially reopening on the 17th, with rolling dates throughout the rest of the month. It's as follows. Our ready-to-open schools, of course, pending the final approval, would begin October 17th. Our combined schools and schools that need to participate in a rolling start and/or a combination of FLVS Flex could begin on October 19th. And, as is always the case, the student enrollment option, because families have been displaced, is an ongoing process, but it is a part of this recommendation as well. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Bernier for superintendent's comments and board discussion.
Madam Chair, members of the board, much more brief in my response now, and then I'm very interested in your questions and the ability to explore further with this amazing team and all the other individuals that lie behind it. I would be remiss to start naming names. I don't think that really is important right now, but the team seated in the left-hand side of the auditorium has been extremely valuable. They've been around 24 hours a day, including some of them at 3 a.m. last night, as I needed thought partners, only to find out that I wasn't waking them up. So I talked a little bit about continuing responses. As we move forward, there are people who are going to be pleased with this process. There are people who are going to be our detractors. What we have to do is be able to explain the why. So our focus today is trying to continue to explain the why. Some of our buildings were more disproportionately impacted than others. Our ultimate why is to, and our ultimate goal is to get our students returned to their school building. But some of their school buildings have been damaged to the point where we need time in order to do that. We will continue to commit to that community of learners concept, that the young people who were engaged in Sanibel Island in a K-8 environment will have a home to go together with their teachers and with their principal. That home will be different than Sanibel School. But eventually, we will build them a temporary site while we make the determinations moving forward as to what we do with Sanibel Island's K-8 school. Same with Fort Myers Beach, same way with Caffaretta. Some of the other partnered schools that you saw, like a Skyline, their buildings are going to be able to get ready. And when their buildings are ready, we will transition them out of those partnerships. And what we liked about partnerships as a concept was they kept the same bell time, which avoids another round of transportation in an already stressed transportation system. Stress based upon our amount of choice and, with grace and compassion, the number of individuals from those departments who can and are able to return to work. So we need to just prepare for that. The ready to open piece is already underway. Many buildings are one check mark away from being ready to open. I shared with some of you, I shared with actually all of you, and I'll share with this community. I have been blessed to have a professional colleague reach out to me and to say, if you need help and assistance, I will come. His name is Jeff Wagner, W-A-G-N-E-R. He is the former Chief of Facilities and Construction and Operations in Las Vegas, Nevada. He is no longer employed there. He works for another company as a senior executive. But he is taking a step back from that business where he is the principal owner, and he is coming to work with our team. Jeff's job is to enhance our work in facilities, construction, and operations, and to lend his expertise to a team that includes, as their major heads, Scott Rickenbacker, Joel de Guzman, Frederick Ross, and Barbara Cedeno. That team, your team, has been doing amazing work. Jeff's leadership is just an opportunity for them to have a voice and a thought partner and then a presence at the cabinet level so that those concerns are explained and additional leadership, enhancing the leadership that was already there, is provided. So when we set opening dates, remember that we also have to plan backwards from a date. We have promised that our teachers need a day for themselves to reunite as a faculty and to make some determinations about where their classrooms are and what needs to be done. They have an additional day of planning, which will also include that opportunity for family reunification and student reunification during the day. So whenever we open a school, you also have to think 2 days prior to it. How do we make sure we get staff in for 2 days? And how do we give our families the opportunity to see that? And I'm proud of this team as well. I'm sure they would explore it if the question was asked. We've provided very explicit criteria related to those opportunities for parents to visit. They're not going to be a 1-hour window. They're going to be a wide open schedule because parents are going to need that in the current condition that they may be in. So in terms of parent options, the team went even further with mobile teams from student enrollment. Soretta Ralph has been amazing, again, in committing to cutting the red tape for someone who may have moved from the Cape to Lehigh, plans to spend the rest of their time there for the significant future, and wants to transfer into a school on the east side of town where we have space and enrollment. Those mobile teams are there to help support parents with that option, but parents must understand, and I want to make sure it's clear, that that's a transfer for 1 full year. We cannot be bouncing children back and forth. So a very informed decision has to occur if they choose to take that option. And when I say 1 full year, I really mean the remaining school year. I'm not saying that we'd be moving them again. I think this is still October. I won't be moving them again in October, right? They'd have 1 full school year to complete. FLVS is not only a nationally known program, it is a state Board of Education approved curriculum for virtual learning. Different than maybe, and I was not here at the time, different than maybe what was done in virtual environments where teachers were on their own to create their own lessons and create their own tests and create their own stuff. FLVS is a curriculum that moves forward based upon 6th grade, 7th grade, 2nd grade standards, and the teacher is the facilitator of that learning. They do not have to put lesson plans together. The lesson plans are already provided. The students work, and we are also seeking opportunities for those students, if they can't get into their building, like at Lexington and Diplomat, who were disproportionately impacted. Then we are currently seeking areas that would be safe, but we're looking at some other opportunities, maybe in church halls and other places. When I was the principal of the Orange County Virtual School, we used this, and sometimes teachers met with their students in all amazing places like a Barnes and Noble, right? Any place with connectivity, but a chance to be face-to-face with their teacher as much as possible, we want to make sure we provide. That checklist is, again, reliable power and a safe supply of drinking water. And we mean from the tap. We can't do what we did for Cape Coral when we went under the boil water alert. We cannot run pallets and pallets of water. We need, and we're getting good information that we are there. Windows, roofs, exterior walls, sealed up, tight as we can make them to prevent additional water intrusion. Working air conditioning, a functioning fire alarm and intercom systems, indoor air quality, storm debris removed or stored in a safe and secure location. My mom used to say the back 40. We never had 40. I don't even know what the back 40, I think it means 40 acres. I can clearly know I did not grow up on anything close to that. But there was an area of our yard where yard waste was sort of stored until the day came where we could drag it to the curb. And let me be clear, her boys did that for her. We also must be able to make sure our students can eat. Our children rely on us. Another reason for opening is our children rely on us for breakfast, lunch, and in many cases, supper or dinner, depending on what the appropriate title from the federal government is. And I will make sure I get more up on the lingo from Candy Messenger. Once those criteria are satisfied, the last thing is somebody puts their signature on it to say, this has been done, we have the evidence that this works, we not only trust, but we verify, and then we can start the 2-day clock for teachers, and then the day for our parents and our families, and then the school can reopen. We are getting information as we speak into Jeff Wagner, into Frederick Ross, about those checklists and their completions. By the end of the board meeting, we should have some schools that we should be able to contact today, and they can start on Thursday and Friday, starting that process both for their teachers and for their students. Some people said, well, why can't you start them anyway? We need to make sure our buildings are safe, not just for our students. We need to make sure our buildings are safe for our educators and support professionals to return. So I'm not going to put anybody in a school building, student or otherwise, until those checklists have been checked off. I believe those are all my comments at this point, except to remind everyone that this is a coalition of the willing at this point. Our goal will not be calculus and physics on the first day of school opens. It will be about compassion, grace, sensitivity, and determining what the needs are for our students so that we can take care of Maslow's hierarchy. Can't teach kids that are hungry. You can't teach kids that feel unsafe. But I will set one more point. Aesthetically, it may not be as pretty as you remembered it the day before the storm. There may be missing ceiling tiles. There may be drywall that's been replaced but not yet textured and painted. There may be baseboard missing. In some cases, we've lost a lot of carpet. If you look at those pictures from inside Lexington, there's a lot of bare floor right now. Bare floor is okay. It will be fixed before school and at night, and we will progress on these buildings on a daily basis to make sure that students have a safe environment and a place to get started, while once again we make it the highlight of its community again as not only an effective school building, but a beautiful one as well. At this point, Madam Chair, your superintendent is done with any comments he has, and I look forward to your discussion and questions. Myself and my staff are at the ready.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you all for that presentation. That's a lot to take in for everybody. We're going to start with, I'm going to start with Ms. Vaughn and then Ms. Gittens, please.
Thank you, and first of all, excellent presentation. Thank you, all of you, for all the work that you've done. Okay, so several questions here. The first one, since not all of the teachers will be able to attend the preschool reopening and the training, are you planning to do a video or some alternate version of that training?
Who's going to answer that?
I could go ahead and answer that. Yes, we'll have to find some alternative. Thank you for bringing that to light. We are going to have to find some alternative means and how we can provide that training to teachers who don't come on that first or second day, because we want to make sure they have those tools ready. And I know Jessica Duncan is here as well, so we'll make sure that that's clearly communicated.
Yeah, and it does sound like it could even just be somebody videotaping everything that happened so that the teachers that can't come back have full picture of what it's like. Okay, a couple other questions having to do with academics. So I don't remember, have the kids received their first day of
received their first 9 weeks report cards, did they not?
Ms. Vaughn, no, they have not. This coming Friday was the professional day where our students were going to be off and teachers were going to calculate grades. We have identified that date. We are going to freeze grades where they currently are, and then we will work with our team to make some decisions about grading processes moving forward. I think that will delight some of our children, and I think that would also, in some cases, they're concerned about, wow, I didn't do that big assignment and my mom's now going to find out about it. We will, again, with grace and compassion, what we want to do over the next 2 days is take that type of pressure off of our teachers, but we will come up with a first 9 weeks report card, and again, for everyone, while they are available in focus, we will also print them and make sure they're available at your request.
Okay.
I remember we were either just done or about to finish.
To make that up.
This is a developmental and transitional process. That means that we have discussed that, but we do not have a definitive answer related to that. We would work to do two things in this process, and they may seem diametrically opposed, but I think they're very synergistic. We want to make sure first that we do no harm to our student, but we also want to put teachers in a position where they are not overly burdened with makeup work and makeup procedures. I think there are creative, as a teacher, I would prefer being able to say, you may have missed assignment X, Y, and Z. Here's my alternative for it so that I can control how much time and how much grading I'll have to do, but give the student credit. We will continue our conversations with our thought partners, and we want to make sure we create a win-win in that situation. One, for our students not to be negatively impacted and our teachers to have some relief from how they're going to grade multiple assignments from multiple kids who may or may not be present.
Okay, and may I suggest that as you have that discussion, you come up with some kind of a definitive guideline, because, well, you know this, I know this. If we don't have a definitive guideline, we're going to have more discussion from parents and the kids, and, you know, especially some of the high school kids who already have a 4.2 GPA. They're you know, really going to be looking at that. So yeah, I understand what you said, and I'm not sure what that would look like, but certainly we need some kind of a definitive guideline. So two other really quick things. So FLS, the Florida Virtual Flex, it's actually going to be facilitated by our teachers, or how? I wasn't quite clear, because I know that virtual school has a whole different way that they deliver their curriculum. What's the difference with flex added?
Flex is just a terminology they use to define their curriculum. The real question I think that you're asking specifically is who facilitates the learning.
Yeah.
It is our teachers. So if my child was in second grade and they had Ms. Jones for second grade, Ms. Jones will be trained in how to utilize the platform. That is a requirement of the Florida Virtual School.
Okay.
That our teachers have to be trained. It's not difficult. It's a pretty easy to use platform.
Yeah.
But the teacher would facilitate that learning. There are so many words that got hijacked during COVID, like hybrids and pivoting. So I'm trying to be very careful. But back in Orlando, when I came across as the Orange County virtual principal at the time, and my assistant principal is now the principal there, we came across a large group of students who were proceeding towards graduation without an online credit that was going to be required. Okay. We trained all of our economics and government teachers in our high schools on FLVS. They then taught their class through the platform. The kids interacted with those teachers every day,
Okay.
But the teacher didn't have to plan their lessons. The teacher had a state-approved curriculum, and then they enhanced it with additional lessons. And those children still got an online requirement. Those teachers found themselves in a little bit better position and wanted to continue because some of the burden of planning all the lessons was taken off from them. So we believe this provides us an opportunity to provide a state-approved curriculum, taking the pressure off of our teachers that will be asked to change a modality, but in a way that is then done fairly and compassionately for our kids. And the 4-day minimum is the 4-day minimum. That's what FLVS, in order to get credit for the time, requires. So you could potentially transition back to a diplomat or to a Lexington 10 days in. You would just continue to do that until the 14th day ended. You'd be graded based upon your progress. That would begin the second 9 weeks grade.
But the teachers are going to have to select where they start in that curriculum, because if I'm not mistaken, it's a progressive curriculum, is it not, where they complete a unit, test, move on?
The curriculum is aligned to Florida standards.
Right,
We have pacing guides, which would allow us a definitive opportunity to explain to a teacher at a certain grade level, this is where you would begin based upon where you should have been in our progression.
Okay.
Great question.
And just two quick other things. What happens to our ESOL and ESE kids who cannot access the building? Do they have any virtual option, ESE and ESOL?
We will continue to work. It's another amazing question, and it gives us a chance to use the word all again. We are responsible for all of the children in this district, while some of those IEPs and some of those ELL plans will provide us some additional opportunity and hurdles to take out of the way. You can effectively work with FLVS. We can effectively work with other options. And I think once we get schools back and there are staffing specialists and the other really important people that help parents guide through the ELL process and their IEPs, we'll have to make up some time as well, because the IEP is very specific. Students have been out of school. We'll have some compensatory work that we have to do specific to those IEPs as well.
And so similar to that, our ACE, AP, and IB kids?
I will ask Dr. Spiro to weigh in on that one. He has much more expertise than I. I have an answer, but I want to make sure it's a correct one.
Those are the kids, those are the kids and parents that are going to be really on top of us looking, because there's a test and everybody's sympathetic to Lee County, but the College Board is not going to change their AP language and comp date because Lee County missed some time. So, and that'll be my last question, if you can answer that.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. First, I do want to say all of those organizations you just spoke about, IB, ACE, and College Board, have all reached out to us and asked us what flexibility do we need to allow students to matriculate through their curriculum. So they are attuned to what our needs are.
I'm
it's been, yes, it has been delightful in that aspect, that people really are trying to allow us as a community to heal and move forward. But the two schools specifically that we're looking at for FLVS Flex are the two middle schools.
Okay.
So that will not impact as much as it would have been at the secondary high school level. So where we are today, we're going to be okay with those schools.
But there's still parents that can't, for instance, if a parent, I know of one parent that, maybe let's say went to Georgia or to Michigan or somewhere, and they can't get back right away, and they're high school kids, let's say, and they want to stay connected to Lee schools. So
I misunderstood your question then. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the FLVS Flex curriculum.
No. Well, I kind of got off a little bit on that because FLVS doesn't have the ESOL and the ESE, right?
So, right,
And
so
so
as.
I'm also now going to the other end of that. They also, or do they? Do they have,
So as of right now, for the students you're talking about who maybe are out of the area and then they're going to come back to the district, and
right.
how do they remain on track? When we've spoken with IB and our ACE schools, they're going to allow us some flexibility with our students as we continue to onboard those students back at schools. We will need to deal with those students individually
Okay.
to determine their pathway back because of how extensive those courses are.
and you know how I feel about those upper levels, so let's not forget about those kids, but I know those kids and their parents won't let us forget about them.
Madam
So
Chair.
thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just add to Dr. Spiral's response? The same grace and compassion we're showing to our employees is the same countless emails I've written back to, and my apologies to anybody who's emailed me. I'm not quite as responsive as I have been in the last few days. But so many parents are asking me, we're out of town, it will take us a while to get back. If you start on Monday or now on October 19th, what will happen? Am I going to start to get truancy letters? We are going to come back with our students in the same manner. We will make some definitive endpoints to our grace and compassion. I hate to say that out loud. It sounds like we're going to, cross over and just start being mean. But what I'm saying is we'll cross over and reestablish the standards at some point for mandatory attendance and other things. But right now is not the time. Right now is an opportunity to get our students back to school and our teachers back in their community of learners together and assess where we need to move forward, not just educationally, but personally with them as well.
Thank you. And I'm going to move on to Ms. Gittens. And if we can, just out of respect for one another, get at least, we can come back a second time. So if we can keep everybody to perhaps maybe 5 minutes, because this is really important stuff, and then come back a second time once everybody has had the opportunity to speak. Ms. Gittens?
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you to everyone in the audience, the superintendent, of course, for all the work that you guys have done. And we'll talk more about that later. I have 3 quick things. One was brought to mind by what Ms. Vaughn talked about with the testing. I have had some parents that have contacted me, the students that were set to take like the ACT or SAT, and they were told that their particular time was just canceled and that they had to find another time. And yet there were other students at other schools that they were automatically set up for a different time. So I'm saying that to ask, can you please look into that? And then if there is a contact or something through the college boards or whatever that those parents can reach out to, I think that would be a good thing for them. On the very last slide, if you can pull that up really quick, what came to my mind is 3 words: choice and planning and timing. And those 3 things don't always make good bedfellows. They kind of fight against each other. So I'm thinking we're giving parents and students that were displaced choice through school choice to find somewhere to go. But we also have to plan at those places that they may choose to go to and be ready to receive them. So what is, or do we have a timing cutoff or some type of a plan? Because if all of a sudden those, 50 come back from, Chicago, and they've got, 50 students, and they say, we're here now, and we want to be in this zone because that's where we're going to live. Do we have some type of a plan or a cut? And it kind of goes to what the superintendent was saying. We don't want to be mean, but you've got to have some type of cutoff in order to plan, is what I'm saying.
And Ms. Gittens, that's great. Dr. Bertier, I know that you did mention, and maybe you need to restate that, you had mentioned that if that is the case and someone does move into a new location and would like to go to another school, if available, if seats are available, then they could go to the student assignment.
And I understand that. I'm just saying, though, are there any parameters? Is there any time frame for those that are still here?
So again, in my opening comments, I talked about definitive statements. Right now, I don't have one other than to say this. We suspect, and not just from a wild guess, from our experiences both in the state of Florida and outside of the state of Florida with disasters, populations relocate. It is my suspicion that our student enrollment that was over 100,000 prior to Ian will be significantly less than that. I can't put a significant number on it, but I can tell you in this community and to our teachers and to our staff, the state has agreed for a date certain of our enrollment prior to the hurricane. So this district will be funded in a manner which will allow us to continue to employ our individuals and continue to have them help and support our students. There will be maybe difficult decisions as we move ahead, but we believe right now we do have that space. We do have that opportunity to be generous and kind. And we'll have to look in specifically as students re-enroll and we see where our schools begin to reach capacity. We will then have to continue to reapply the rules of engagement that we've had with this community and with our people who move here that we've applied in the past. A definitive date of that would be as we know more about our schools and their enrollment and where they stand and whether those numbers of 750 at Hector Caffaretta are still 750
Right.
or whether they're 600, 500. We just don't have that answer yet.
Right, and I can understand that. I think for not just the purpose of the parents, but also for staff that are concerned too that, okay, our school is ready and open and we've got space and they're just going to flood us with students, are some of the comments. And I know that's not, but for the sake of staff, we need to at least give them the ability to know that we will control that situation.
Clearly, that is not our intent. Yes, ma'am.
Right, okay. The last thing is, and I've spoken to the superintendent about this before, and you mentioned it in your comments about food for students. Many of our students, as we know, their main meals during the day come from us when they are in school. So a suggestion, I know, first of all, thanking Pinellas County for providing all of the meals that they did for us to do a drive-through grab and go at James Stevens. I personally am a little concerned about certain areas of students. For example, in the East Zone, not just the East Zone, but I can say this as an example, from Leonard to 82, from Lee Boulevard to Gunnery, and across from there, where there are a plethora of duplexes and a plethora of students. Not trying to give anyone any extra work, but a simple thing rather than having a drive-through, because I'm really concerned about some people's ability to not just continue to come through every drive-through they see, would be to take 1 or 2 buses. And if we can get a partnership with another district, and I know you've been working on that, and to put 500 of those meals on a bus and actually go through the areas where we know, according to our scatter charts of our students, where they're located, and, send the message out that the bus will be coming through there between such and such time, and to just drive where they are and to distribute some grab and goes. We did that during COVID, and I think especially if we're going to delay starting in some areas, and I say the East Zone because there wasn't a lot of damage in the East Zone from Ian. So sometimes we tend to forget that there's still that need that continues, that was there before the storm and continues throughout. So I would like to offer that suggestion, and we can talk about it later. And thank you all again.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. And that is there are other organizations too that we can reach out to that will go there too. So that's a great, thank you for that, sharing that. Who else? Miss Morgan, please.
I just have a simple question. Would you talk a little bit about the indoor air quality assessment? What exactly is that? What does it tell parents and staff?
Indoor air quality assessment, hang on, it's a new term for me. Industrial hygienists are new to me. I mean, I've had indoor air quality as a former building administrator, as a deputy, as a chief of staff and other things. It is a test of air quality. What we're specifically looking for is information that would create an unhealthy breathing environment. There are then additional remediations if the test was to come back to say that the air is currently unsafe. Then there's additional work that has to be done in air ducts and air filters with water intrusion, especially salt water intrusion, and the water that came into our buildings, certainly not clean water or chlorinated. We have to ensure that as we've dried those buildings out, and that's what all those tubes were that Mr. Ramirez provided in the photographs. Those are not only just air conditioning ducts, but also in some of the areas, they're heating ducts. They're heating up those rooms to draw the moisture out and then switching over to pull out. We want to make sure that there's an expert that goes in to say that for the students and for the staff, that air is healthy. I'll have to get back to you on the lack of my scientific knowledge of that, but the simple thing is, and these people are independent of me, they're independent of our school district, they have separate labs. We want to ensure that that our buildings are healthy.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Fisher, please.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to say my compliments to the superintendent and the staff for the work that they have done tirelessly, and to those people who have come to us from places further away with food, supplies, compassion, and workers. We have a lot of additional traffic on our roads because we have people here who have come to help. And so I appreciate that. I had an opportunity to be here the last 2 days talking with some of the staff people who came in, and the conversations varied. We've all been traumatized in different ways, and I think the disproportionate impact is a good way of describing that. So as I talked to teachers and support staff, some of them were hopeful, some of them were grateful to be alive. Many of them did not have homes or cars. My own neighborhood, which is a neighborhood where people do have resources, people's lives are on their front lawns because of the flooding. The storm surge was an experience I'll never forget. I think that we have a tremendous amount of debris, a tremendous safety situation. And so as the teachers talked about how they were kind of burned out before the storm because of short staff, and on the expectations that they are coming to work on Thursday. Some of them were very disturbed about that, and I said, if you can't, you don't. You need to take care of yourself and your family first, and finding a place to live and a vehicle to drive and food for your kids may be a priority. I want to consider a couple of things. Communication, because one of the messages I got, and it was aptly described in a phone call that came here to the district, and I spent some time talking with this person who was calling on behalf of teachers and staff. Because of their lack of communication, and their no internet, no Wi-Fi, and I still don't have that, so I understand what they're saying, because you feel disconnected. So they're feeling like things are happening and they don't know what it is. So I think that communication is something we have to consider. How can we improve our ability to connect with people who are still without the typical
cell phone and computer and TV that we're used to. And then I was going to ask about the FLVS Flex also for people who have no internet connection. You know, they're not, how would they do that? I mean, they may not be able to get to a library or a Barnes and Noble or something like that. Our population has increased, and with all the additional people here, our traffic flow is much slower. I think Monday it took me from Southwest Cape an hour and a half to get here. So, and that was because of the traffic. And some lights were still not working. So as we do this, I just want to say, I have told teachers and staff, I think it's so important for us to reopen school as we can, because for many of our kids, even before the storm, school is a safe place. It's a place where their social, emotional, and basic needs, like food, are met. And I think Ms. Gittens alluded to that. Dr. Spiro said that the plan is to connect with the kids first, bring them back, assess their needs, see how our staff is, and then we'll go on to our academics. So I really appreciate all the work that all of you have done, and I know that we have many of our staff who I talked to at the principals meeting the other day who have lost their homes. One of them is a neighbor of mine. My heart goes out to everybody, but we do need to rebuild. It's going to take time. It's going to take cooperation. It's going to take working together, and it's going to take help from other people. So as we embark on this goal of opening schools, which is very important for not only the mental health, but the physical health of our kids. I want to offer anything I can do to support, and I want to, again, just, God bless you all.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. Ms. Schiavinelli, did you?
We'll take care of it.
Everybody has pretty much said everything that I was thinking, and I think it's just really important. It's about community, and we're here to support that. Each family has to do what's best for them first. That's what I'm telling teachers that are talking to me very upset about having to come back when they're not ready. Well, we don't really want you if you're not ready, because if you're not whole, then you're not going to be any benefit to our children. And so I think that's really important for you to think of you and your family first. For those that are ready, I know are ready. So we have to look at those as well. So we are community, and I believe that community helps each other. We are better together. I'm a firm believer in that. So, I think as a district, we're here for that. And I love what you said, Mary, because it is exactly what you just said. And you have to, each individual has to address their issues individually. Yet we have to educate our children, and that's really vital and important. And how we do that is going to be a work in progress. As you said, it changes every day. So, their plan initially was the 17th. It might be the 19th. And I respect the superintendent's decisions because, and the staff, because the hard work that's put in the process is amazing. And I thank you, because I obviously see that's night and day. But honestly, you're the experts, and y'all know what's best for children and how that works. So you're working it out, and I think that's probably one of the best things that we're lucky to have you guys for that, because that's what you're here for, and I really appreciate that hard work. This is actually for the superintendent. One quick question. I've had principals tell me they were delayed in entering their schools to clean up, even when they had virtually no damage or little damage. If you could explain why they were delayed, because I know So people aren't understanding that. And I think this is something that the community needs to understand and be aware of that. Thank you.
Truly appreciate the question. As a former building principal, the first thing I wanted to do is go back in my building post-hurricane and check it out, and then call my community members that I knew I could rely on to come help me clear brush, do things. We had to ensure that coming into the school buildings was safe. We had to make sure that before we could enlist volunteers, and I really appreciate our path forward with our legal team and with our principals and community to understand that we wanted volunteers, and you turned out in massive numbers at some school buildings to do work that you wouldn't normally be doing. But we had to ensure that the environments were safe and that we wouldn't lose someone post-storm to a down power line or an electrified puddle. You know, we hear those stories post-hurricane where people come out too fast, and we wanted to ensure the environments were safe before we put volunteers on the ground.
Thank you. I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patrica.
If I go over, stop me and then I'll come back for a second round. So I just want to say in general to anybody that might be watching that I have to beg for your continued patience as we work our way through this. I believe that our families have been fantastic up to this point. But the disproportionate impact piece is, I think, going to start to reveal itself as this process plays out. I said at our last meeting, I come from an area of the county where there was very minimal impact. There were pockets of significant impact, but for the most part, we've returned to a sense of normalcy, and those parents are sitting at home with their kids and wondering why can't my kids get back to school? And what they don't necessarily understand is their child's teacher had a home on Fort Myers Beach that no longer exists. And getting staff back into buildings in order to be able to teach kids, even if your building is as safe as it was before Ian, is a significant challenge for us. And so I beg the patience of our families as we continue through this process. I also want our families to have a very clear sense of what they are walking into on day one. These are not pretty buildings. These are not pretty campuses. And we are looking at situations with combined schools and with staff that's unable to return where we're going to have combined classrooms. We might have one teacher teaching two classes at the same time. We might have two teachers in the same classroom teaching their own classes. When your kids come home and say, Mom, there were 45 kids in my math class today, we're sorry, but that is literally the best that we can do right now. So when I say I beg for your continued patience, that's what I mean. It's not just about getting back to school, whatever that date is. It's about fixing the logistics of this over an extended period of time. This is not going to be over when schools are open. This is going to continue for a long period of time. So, and I agree with the superintendent. We have to find a way forward. We all have been contacted by a lot of people who simply don't think that we're ready to reopen. And I get it if you're not ready to go back to school, if you're not ready to go back to work, I get it, and no one is forcing you. What do you call it, a coalition of the willing? It's not just a coalition of the willing, it's a coalition of the able as well. And we recognize that some of you are unable to come back to work, and we accept that and we support that. That being said, this community needs the normalcy of kids in school. And I've done a ton of research. Lori Howard would be most impressed with this, I think. I've done a ton of research on trauma and the response there too. And the first stage is survival, and the next stage is, I can't remember the name of the next stage, but I know that a big piece of the next stage is the reestablishment of routines to include school and work. And that's where most of us are. Some of us are still in survival. Don't come back to school if you're still in survival. But if you're in recovery, that's what it is. The second stage is recovery. Reestablishing routines, it's going to bring you a sense of comfort that you can't even anticipate at this point. you know, when I pick up the phone and I finally get in touch with Marshall Bauer, for example, reconnecting with him gives me a sense of hope and a sense of, I mean, I laughed with him on the phone, first time I've laughed in a really long time. And we're gonna find our school communities coming together and doing that, and the difficulty of getting back to school, the difficulty of far longer bus rides. I mean, in the beginning, these bus rides are gonna be ridiculous. Kids are gonna be waiting at bus stops longer than they were before when we had a bus driver shortage. It's all going to be worth it when we can start to come back together as communities. A question I don't need answered right now, but it is a question that I have previously brought up, is what are we doing about substitute teachers? It's my understanding that there were a significant, almost unprecedented number of substitute teachers needed in order to reopen Collier schools. I can only imagine that we will need more here in Lee County. So Superintendent, if you could provide us with an update, you know, at some point in the week regarding our plans on that, I would appreciate it. I don't know how first quarter grades impact college applications. I mean, I just went through this with my own daughter. I think it's only end of semester grades that matter. So we're not in trouble there. If we could clearly communicate that with our, as Ms. Vaughn said, our high flying students, they're all very stressed about this process right now. I do have to say that I am anxious, and I know this information isn't going to come today, but I have to say out loud that I am anxious to receive information regarding money spent, sources used, anticipated FEMA reimbursements. I am very anxious to receive that. I have to give a shout out to South Fort Myers High School. Their sheltering activities and services were beyond anything anybody could have ever expected from them. But in addition to that, it's my understanding that they're running a teacher boutique out there, and it has, every teacher with whom I've spoken has just been so incredibly grateful for that. And teachers have lost everything. Now for the not so positive in my comments, I support your plan. I think the combined schools is genius, and the only area where I have to really push back is the FLVS. I don't think it's fair to the students in those two schools. I know that online learning requires a significant amount of ability for a student to be a self-starter. It is appropriate for our high-flying students. It is not appropriate for our average and below students. We're not providing those students with the ability to reunify physically, you know, get into a building and reunify with their classmates. We're not necessarily providing that opportunity for teachers, and even if we do it on a one-time basis, they're still disconnected from each other on a daily basis. You've heard me say it a million times, I've got 4 kids. 3 of them would fail miserably in FLVS. It would not be an educational environment that would be conducive to their learning. I have 1 that would have succeeded, although begrudgingly. If I'm a parent at Lexington Middle, I'm pulling my child out and putting them in a different school. It doesn't feel fair, and it doesn't feel effective. I mean, the words that you used were something safe, sensible, and effective. I question the sensibility of it, and I question the effectiveness of it. I believe it's safe. I just don't think it's a conducive learning environment for a lot of kids.
Okay,
so those are my comments for now. Thank you.
Oh, see, I was just getting ready to catch.
Madam Chair, just a couple of things. Yes, we will get you information on our substitutes. I was watching Mr. Dodig make rapid notes. I think for the community who's tuning in, I would ask Dr. Spiro to speak a little bit about, if he can, or we can just get back to you, about the college applications and whether this first 9 weeks is critical or whether it's a semester. I saw you nodding, so that's why I'm coming back to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. For those that are applying for college, it's the semester grade that matters. We have not moved the semester end date, so students they're going to still have that same opportunity. I also want to let you know we are pushing out next week ACT and SAT boot camp. It's a 3-week boot camp that we're going to be using some of our resources with. That'll be sent as students start coming back to school, especially targeting our seniors to help them. If they missed that ACT or SAT window, we're going to continue to try some additional supports for them as they get ready for that November test as well. And I'll share that information in our board update.
Thank you. Can you ask, so if you're a Flex, the Flex Florida virtual, are you considered a part-time student in that? Because it's different from the Florida virtual. I know my grandson was part of that at one time, and it was not considered a full-time. So how does that work with the kids if they're in the Florida Flex versus the Florida virtual? Because it's the same, but it's different. Does anybody have that answer? And how does that come, how do the kids come back into the part-time to full-time?
Okay, so FLVS Flex would be full-time. It would be the way a student begins to deal with the standards of 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade curriculum, because we're looking at it specifically for 2 middle school sites. I do agree that virtual learning is not for everyone, so we have provided options for parents related to if that's not the model. But again, I think Ms. Patrica and all of you have said it in your own way. It's going to be hard, but just a hair more patience. We're setting predictive dates on our school buildings. We have moved mountains. If somebody would have told me the day after the storm that we'd have power at every one of our buildings and potable water, I would have told you you're out of your mind. And here we are. So let our groups on the ground continue to mitigate, continue to restore, and Lexington and Diplomat may be in a very different position by Monday. I don't want to make false promises. I just want to be sure that we're aware that any date that we're putting out right now still remains a target. With that safety list being checked off, I'll give Lexington some hope. You know, the 2nd and 3rd floors of Lexington are amazing. The water didn't come through the roof, it came through the doors at the 1st level, all right? And it didn't come in at 20 feet, it came in at about 6 inches to a foot. But, you know, drywall, I think that's why they call it drywall, because when it gets wet, it wicks and it moves up. So there's some mitigation that has to go on there, and then there's enough water for things like an intercom system to potentially have been impacted, the fire control panel to be impacted. So while we might be able to get the carpet and the the tile out of that environment, there's still additional work that has to be happened. But there is an army there right now. Literally, there's more than 68 people there. And, you know, I've talked to some of you, could we get more? Yes, we've asked for more. We've brought in portable lights. But at some point, you can have too many people in the kitchen, and there does become the law of diminishing returns. So, as to FLVS Flex, having been a middle school principal, the critical component becomes those teacher check-ins. People have asked about hotspots indirectly and additional computers. We are planned to help support that. And right now, as of this presentation, I'll use the word, we're just not yet there with a potential environment where if the kids could get to it, not only would they have their computer in their lesson, but they would have their teacher in front of them. And that we will reunify the Lexington staff, and we will reunify the Lexington community. Not in the Lexington building, but we will reunify them. Can we do that every day? Maybe not right away. But if you think about how much we've been able to do and how much this community's been able to do in the time that we've had, it does provide us an option. Is it perfect for everyone? No. Is San Carlos perfect for everybody who used to go to the Sanibel school? Probably not. And yet, I do think it is genius. I wish it was my idea. I was all about building additional sites and getting those ready as quickly as possible. Then I went to Lexington and found a 60-foot high pile of debris piled on the soccer field that belongs to the county. That kind of scratched my list for where I could put Fort Myers Beach. So this is all transitional, And these are our best thoughts moving forward right now. And we will continue to keep you updated. We will provide that accounting. I have met with legal. I'm going to be stepping back from the emergency powers potentially as early as Friday afternoon, because I want to give it back before you guys ask for it. I just want to be candid. I took it begrudgingly, if you remember my phone call. But giving it back before it's asked for also sends another amazing message that I believe in, and I shared with all of you in your direct reports, my direct reports with you over the last 2 days. It sends an amazing message that your superintendent believes in the governance power of this board and believes in the structures that the citizens have put in place to elect members to watch and help support the proper use of public tax dollars. I'm excited about getting back to that process. It will mean some pretty amazing good cause items occasionally, but I'd rather have you involved in the process of planning that than have that responsibility squarely just on my shoulders. So I think I tried to touch base on 2 board members' comments as we went through.
Yeah, no, I think, thank you. And everyone so far, I'm just like note writer, crazy here. Everyone has really, thank you, Ms. Fisher, too, for those comments, because I felt that, really felt that one. Because my own family is over there and going through that as well. So I'm going to go to Ms. Gittens. Did you have something else to say? And then Ms. Morgan.
Yes, I do.
Ms. Gittens.
I have a
Yeah, what?
I have a question regarding the emergency powers, and this may be something we have to discuss offline, but how does, or is there any effect on our support that we receive from either state or federal if we are not in the emergency standing?
No. I will tell you, and thank you for the question, because it gives me a chance to recognize Anastasios, Alex, the Chief of Staff for the Governor, Commissioner Diaz, Jacob Olivia, and the countless people, the other fellow superintendents who have helped us so much. There is a strong realization at the state level, which is being communicated to the federal level, that we were ground zero for Ian. And I can't tell you how supportive they have been with resources and escalating tickets. You know, to get a hold of Starlink, which is Elon Musk's connectivity using satellites, to say, hey, we think we might be able to get Pine Island open, but we're not going to be able to run fiber optic to it. Can I get a Starlink? And then you get 5, not just 1, 5 of them, so that we can have the connectivity that Pine Island needs in order to do its work with focus and all those other things. And potentially, you know, is just one example. The debris people, you know, it's just a countless list of thank you notes that have yet to be written. But I will get started on that this weekend. So no, I don't see an impact from that aspect, and it certainly won't impact any type of FEMA reimbursement for what we've been spending in order to deal with this emergency.
And my last question is in relationship to what Ms. Fisher was saying, and you know, communication has always been one of my main concerns about how do we contact our constituents and students and stuff. So my out-of-the-box brain thought of the fact that they don't have phones, they don't have internet, they don't have whatever, but there are stores, there are gas stations, there are other businesses that they may have access to. And what about the possibility of us sending electronically to these businesses that agree a flyer with an update of information for our parents or community that we want them to know, and ask them to just post it maybe on a weekly basis or whatever, if there's something. There are some stores, there are some of the, what do you call the drive-up food, the
Fast food.
no, the drive, you know, the trailer, what do you call them?
Oh, you're talking about the pods.
No, you know, the
That's
food,
where
the
they get
food
food-
carts,
food
the
and
food
water.
trucks.
Yeah.
The food trucks. So there are those that are out there, there's Publix, there's, other stores, there's gas stations, that if we had something and we just say to the business community, if you would post our information for us, then just add them to the list, and as something goes out, they have it to post up as well. Just a thought. And I have one other thing, but I'll save it until the end. Thank you.
Ms. Gittens, to the end of this topic or the end of good of the order? Okay, thank you. And then Ms. Morgan, please.
Yeah, so I just want to address staff. I think what you've accomplished is extraordinary. And I think the reason that you've been able to do what you've done is because starting with a change in leadership, you all have engaged in a really robust exercise to put together a leadership culture, a leadership team, a common understanding of how you're going to work, identify problems, and solve problems. And I just want to say that I think your extraordinary presentation this afternoon, all of the thought that's been given, the various options that have been provided, is just, it's a statement to the community about how hard you all have worked the past few months to be a transitional, transformative leadership team. And here you are, and this is the demonstration of it. And I just want to say thank you very much for what you have accomplished. I appreciate each and every one of you.
Ms. Vaughn.
Yeah, and I totally agree. However, when I first started thinking about this, I was very much moved by the numerous letters, emails that we have received from teachers. And one of the teachers that were asking to please put off the opening for yet one more week, that would be the 24th for the kids. And something interesting about the letters, we've had letter campaigns in the past where after I'd read the identical letter 14 times and I would see the same heading, I would just look at who wrote it and go on to the next, go on to the next. These were all very personal and sharing their own personal experiences, the experiences of friends of theirs, of their communities. And every single one of the letters had within it, we are proud teachers of this district. We support this district. We love this district. I know there were some people in the community, believe it or not, who were thinking of some of the teachers as whiners, that what's wrong with them, they need to get their act in gear and get back. No, they're not whiners because, again, these were very personalized letters, and they were also letters that, to a person, were proud to be in the district. Now, I'm extremely happy for grace and sensitivity. Knowing teachers as I do, regardless, there are going to be teachers who aren't ready, who will come back regardless. And as somebody said, it might have been Miss Patrica, like, if they're not whole yet, you can't take from an empty vessel. And there's so many people that, one of my friends that I taught with at Estero, I saw pictures of her home, and it's down now to the studs. And the wonderful thing was, she showed a picture of a team of Estero young men. I loved that picture, and she was there in the middle, and she's going to live in a camper next to her house. until her house can be rebuilt. So my question is, when was the last time we ran the numbers on, you know, the teachers are aware that we're being sensitive, that we love them, and you know, not just teachers, but all of our other employees. And yet we still have the reality that some people have nowhere to live, and their parents, let's say, lived on the East Coast. And so they're going to have to stay there for a little while because they have nowhere. And it's my understanding that, and I know we're reaching out now to have, if you have an extra bedroom, but there are people that I know that cannot find a place to live that's affordable, that the Airbnbs and the hotels and all of the places are booked up. And so, you know, there are a lot of people that are living in, like, let's say a small condo with friends or relatives, and there's like children and 8 people in a place that really fits 2 or 3. So let's look at the reality now. What are our latest numbers on teachers that are committed to coming back on the 17th to teach, and on, what were the dates, the 14th, the 17th, which, the 2 days before, okay, for the teacher? What are our latest numbers on that?
Our latest numbers, which we've reported before, are about 61% of our middle school and elementary school teachers. We're in the high 50s with our high school people. Our principals are continuing to contact and work with staff. We need them to reunify, though, to get a better handle on what those exact numbers, for all the reasons all of you have explained. Connectivity's down. Yes, we have not put up a sign at the gas station yet that said, please call into this number, but I think that's another great example. I remember being a first-year dean and going with my school counselor to hang bus schedules in the windows of gas stations, because that's how we communicated. That was before I even had an email account, so I've just dated myself how old I am. But we have a responsibility to find out where our staff and where our students are, and we will continue to do that. But I will tell you that even today, before coming to the board meeting, I went down to greet a group of professionals that were gathered in the Caloosahatchee room. In my remarks, there was an individual off to my right, I don't want to identify them, who was clearly struggling. And when I stepped away and Lori Brooks gave me my resiliency hug, I watched her walk out and I knew she'd gone to the restroom. I was with Adam.
To cry. And
we started to go back, and I said, I'm not leaving this hallway until she comes out. I asked her if it was okay to hug her. She said yes. She's not a hugger. She did tell me that later. I know a couple of those people now. And I said, from the superintendent, if you can't do this, walk back into that room and grab your keys and go home. We have to do that right now. My suspicions are we're going to have less staff that are able to return than we had the day before Ian. We are also going to have less students. And while I agree with Ms. Patrica, we may have to combine some classes and they're large, we may have a teacher who's ready to fulfill their purpose and her second graders don't come. We have to be prepared for that too, to help that second grade teacher through that level of additional trauma of, I'm here, but they're not. And how do I find my purpose in that? This is not about calculus and all those other subjects that I can't even remember off the top of my head, and I'm a professional educator. This is about people. We started with people, we're going to continue to be about them, and those are the most recent numbers we have with the lack of connectivity, and that was several days ago.
Okay, so what I'm going to say is, because you have plans for everything, I'm going to guess that you have a number in mind when you do a second or third connect to personnel, including the bus drivers, the cafeteria workers, and all of the people that we rely on. I'm going to guess that if the somewhat definitive number is at 61%, it would be a no-go on the 17th. I'm just guessing. This is me. I don't know. I haven't been informed by anyone. This is just coming from me as an individual. So what I'm asking is, when you do your next go-through, which will have to be done, what is that number? What is that percent? Is it 75%? 80%? Where are we at no-go and put off?
We will make
the
those
opening?
decisions
Wait,
on
but do we have, no, I'm asking,
Sorry.
do we have a number?
No. Those will have to depend upon individual schools. I have a school of 80 students at Fort Myers Beach.
Right.
My suspicions are I might have a school building of 25 when we reopen. I don't need, in that particular school, a percentage. I need the principal to work with their staff and to understand how they can accommodate the children they have in the best manner and means moving forward. Our children need to come back to safe environments. They need to get out of their houses with couches in the front yard. We need to get them back to another place. So no, there is not a definitive percentage. It will be on a case-by-case basis, working with the principal and working with the staff they have, and is it feasible or not?
Okay, but this is the one thing, because I came in here ready to listen. I really came in here with the idea of listening to the teachers who had all very legitimate reasons, and also with the political understanding of perhaps why there is this push. However, I have an open mind with it, and I am extremely impressed with the job that everybody has done. I mean, that's not the issue with me. The issue is, yes, it has to be safe, but safe means that we don't open a high school, that we don't open East Lee County High School with the great numbers that that school has, or Riverdale with the great numbers that they have, but we only are at 61% with the staff coming back. That is not safe. And so that's why I'm being so annoying or insistent or whatever you want to call it, because with all the wonderful planning that you guys have done and all this contingency and that, and I feel like in some way, and I heard what you said, individual schools, but that we really should have a percentage number, because our calendar.
Can you roll, can you?
I'm going to finish it, yes.
Time is coming, your time
Because
is
with
up
the
right now.
calendar, it's within a couple days.
I
So
like the word
that's-
insistent. I don't think it's annoying. I don't think it's annoying at all. I think it's insistent. And I think I am always amazed from your background as an educator, the level of vocabulary that we share when we talk on the phone. I always feel like I always come out of those conversations with a new word, and I think insistent is a good word. You're being insistent and you're asking for something definitive. When I say on a school, what I'm saying is that it is a concert with the central office team. It is not a principal making a decision alone, saying with 5 staff members, I can open East Lee High School, right? We know that's not possible. So we will, but we need to find a reunification point where our staff can come back and say, I'm either not coming that and I don't plan to come back, or I'm back, but on Monday I got to meet my insurance adjuster. So don't count on me for Monday, but then maybe Tuesday. Or and I like what you said before, or my personal life is here, but my therapy is work, right? There are people back in this building, there were people in the room down at Caloosahatchee today that have been disproportionately impacted, but they have the calling to be back with kids. And then there are people who are disproportionately less impacted. We have to find that out. Right. But to have, that's how I started my comment, to have a definitive answer, I don't have my clock in front of me, at 2:05, I don't even know which buildings have cleared all that checklist while I've been sitting here talking with you. It may be 10, it may be 20, it could be 0. We have more work to do, and this is an update to all of you, an update to this community, not a go, no-go meeting. That's not where we're at.
Thank you. I'm going to, Ms. Vaughn, I'm going to move to the next person, which would be Ms. Patrica, and then Ms. Gittens, I'm going to come back around because we're on our second round.
I just want to say I'm really glad that you mentioned the word politics because I didn't want to bring it up. I want this community and specifically our staff to understand, from my perspective, the position from which the superintendent is operating. I am a data girl and I like to try to keep my 30,000-foot view of the district and do what I think I'm supposed to do as a board member. And frequently when I talk to Dr. Bernier, he tells me the individual stories of the staff members whose lives and homes have been devastated by this. And so when I look at Dr. Bernier and I look at his staff, I see them operating with 1 foot in 2 lanes. One lane is the human, compassionate side of who they are and what they do and how they function and what motivates them. And then the other foot is in the lane of, we have got to reopen schools and get this community back to some sense of normalcy. And there's a constant tug between the two. And I believe the balance has been very, very appropriate up to this point. And anybody that's listening that thinks that this team, and the board excluded, this team that's trying to put together plans to get kids and staff back into schools, anyone that thinks that you don't care and that you're operating because you're being motivated by politics, in my estimation, that is simply factually inaccurate. And I just wanted to provide that, that perspective.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
I was going to say this until the end, but I'm going to say it now because it fits this discussion. I'm going to say thank you to a group of people, and I was involved with this yesterday, that met with staff and community people dealing with staff housing and a plan. And I will say names. Thank you to Pastor Roper, who was there, that represented faith-based organizations. Tessa Lesage from Collaboratory, Mr. Lee Ford from the community, Marcus Goods, especially to John Talmadge. We were able to, through his help yesterday, figure out a process where we were not firing together and we were not getting a conclusion because of one document. And because we talked with him several times, and the staff that were involved, of course, Jared Eady, Kendra Penance, Adam Malloy, Dr. Carlin, and Jennifer Schaefer. We spent a lot of time yesterday evening making sure that all the connectivity was happening. And we were able to find out that because this one survey was not done, that there were some of our staff members that were unable to get the temporary housing they needed. So everybody went into full force. If you walk over into room C this morning or this afternoon, there is a section set up for anybody coming in today to fill out the forms, even though today is the last day, that one of their checklist items, if they are homeless at this point, is to fill out that form, which the information goes directly to John Talmadge, and voila, things will begin to happen. So to talk about what the staff and what teams are doing, that's an example that I wanted to mention and to say thank you to everyone for that. The whole gist of the need for this type of thing is that, yes, we want to open schools, but you can't open schools, like you just said, without staff. So we've got to take care of the staff, get them to the point that they can return comfortably. We have, I mean, the stories are just unbelievable. People living in their car. You know, they come up here to fill out FEMA forms. Well, one of the first questions is, well, where are you going to go when you leave here? To my car in the Walmart parking lot. We had, and thank you so much, we'll talk about this later, about the clothing drive that was at South Fort Myers. And the people that had nothing. I'll never forget the little boy, his birthday is Friday. And so, you know, we were giving him extra toys and things and trying to make his life normal again because it was his birthday. So when we talk, as Ms. Patrica was saying, about the human side of it, it is definitely happening. There are more hugs being given out in those rooms A, B, and C right now than you would even think about. So just know we are taking care of our staff, because it's like the age-old story when you're on the airplane, and if the oxygen pops down and you're holding a child, they tell you put yours on first, because you can't help someone if you can't breathe. So I wanted to mention that and say thank you to the group that is at this point working on that. And I mentioned at our meeting last week that a lot of people have survivor's guilt and they feel like they want to do something. Well, I'm saying on Sunday, if you go to church, pretty much every church in this community is going to have an announcement that we want you to really listen for, pray about it, and get involved. Because if we have a teacher, you have an extra room, and you can put up a teacher or their family for a certain period of time, then they can get back to school and our children can get back to normal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are approximately 30 minutes over our scheduled time for this conversation. I know this is really a very, very important conversation to have, but we have agenda review that follows this, as well as a shade session afterwards at 3 o'clock, which we have to do at 3. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that as we move forward to the next item. Dr. Bernier, is there anything else that you would like to share, or the team?
I think just to, my apologies, yes, Madam Chair, just to close out, I think approximately 9:45 this morning, I recorded a video going out to the community and to our staff related to the safety factors that we discussed today, those aspects of everything from water and power all the way down to a final sign-off by a building professional. We know this community is hurting. What I'd like to share is none of this is easy. And I don't want anybody to discount the fact that because we put a PowerPoint up, that somehow, you know, we're not still considering the pain and the suffering that's still available in our community in amounts that are unheard of. I said before that about something being unequivocally not true. The Commissioner of Education, Jacob Olivia, Anastasios, Alex from the governor's office, have been nothing but supportive. I spoke to them last night after a pretty difficult EOC meeting with my own emergency operations team, and I said, I'm level setting for tomorrow night's 5 o'clock phone call. They listened with open ears. They reminded me that I am the superintendent, and with my board, this is our school system. But I told you when I interviewed that when a difficult decision has to get made, I was kind of hoping to get a little more time, that I would make that decision based upon the best interest of the children. I was not lying. And while this will impact adults and how adults feel about their school system, the children that can and are able and are still around need a place to go. And if staff is able and capable and willing, then I think we can start doing really great things to put this community back together with one more piece. You know, when Publix opened, I was thrilled. When the gas supply became better, I was even happier. When the stoplight went up at Colonial and Metro and stopped a 45-minute commute, that is normally 10. All those little victories. We're going to start with the 10,000 problems that the school district of Lee County has, and we're going to solve them one stoplight, one Publix, one gas station at a time. And that's where I'll stop.
Thank you. And I just want to say too, because I know since the very beginning, being out there 24 hours a day myself and seeing firsthand what you all have been doing, I think I've seen you all more than I've seen my own family in the last couple of weeks in just different locations. And being at the EOC night and day, regardless of what the hours were, away from your families, I just really want to thank you. So we will move on to our next agenda. Thank you, guys, and ladies and gentlemen.
Visit the Sandville School in 15 minutes. We're supposed to be at the Sandville School in 15 minutes.
You are?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know as we wait to move on to the next agenda, I know a lot of us had our calendars, reminders all week where we were supposed to be in our North Fort Myers High. We're supposed to do their performance this week. So, you know, as we progress through the upcoming months, we'll, you know, look forward to seeing all of those kids doing what they're supposed to do. Okay, so next, and turn this back over to you. Dr. B, we have the agenda review.
So just to make sure, because you know that I'm always conscientious
Yep.
in terms of the audience being able to hear. So if Ms. Patrica, I know you just made the comment, just to make sure it's on the record.
I just said I was supposed to be at the Sanibel School
I
in 15
responded it.
minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
She made, okay, so Miss Patrica made a mention, because she just popped up, a calendar reminder popped up that she was supposed to be somewhere at the Sanibel School in 15 minutes. And that's when I said that all of us throughout this week, we have been having multiple messages. Well, I haven't, because I just got them all today, because I was able to have internet today and lights yesterday. And I apologize for not answering emails, and I thank my colleagues for answering emails, because I have not had been not fortunate enough to have that internet. But we all have had pop-ups of where we should have been or could have been this week, where, you know, we will look forward to it in the future. So that's what she had stated. Dr. Bernier, please.
Madam Chair, October 18th is our next regularly scheduled board meeting. Agenda, again, was posted last night. We did not review it in our one-on-ones at the level we normally do, only because we were very focused upon reopening. I have reviewed the items with my cabinet. I have additional reading to do related to all of these items, but I stand at the ready if there are any questions regarding any items that are moving forward. And if I don't have the answers, I will get you the answers in the board update. So I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I know Ms. Schaefer usually gives us questions, and I'm not sure if any questions were able to be sent in regarding this agenda. So if I may suggest, if you don't have any right at this moment, once you have the opportunity to go over what the agenda is, if you will send them forward to Ms. Schaefer, so that way it can go to the superintendent and a response can come to all of us. Would that be something that you'd be all willing to do? Ms. Morgan, you had something?
Well, I actually sent in my questions. So,
Oops.
no.
Sorry.
Jen, did I?
Ms. Schaefer, did you receive questions?
Yours were more along the lines of
Right.
and I have provided those.
I have some response to those. That's why I was being specific about questions.
Oh, sorry.
There was a question about E1 regarding the first addendum to the professional services agreement with RSM. This is the current agreement with RSM. Your auditing team ends on December of 2022. So this approves the scope of work that you've provided them extends into 2023. So the addendum extends that agreement to coincide with the scope of work for those audits you've approved previously, seemingly years ago, but just probably a few short board meetings ago where you're talking about the auditing procedures. That's one question.
Right.
I'm also aware of a request to look deeper into, and I will do the very best I can. There were a couple of items related to K, the consent related to operations, and that had to do with
The Veterans Park.
Veterans Park.
Yeah, there's some release of lien to the state and sale of property, whatever. And I really, you don't have to dig deep into it. There are, I think, 3 items. And I just wanted to understand better how that came about, and I don't see.
It's number 5 and number 6. Number 5 specifically related to Veterans Park is about an easement related to working with the Florida Governmental Utility Authority, FGUA. Those are the people who provide us the utilities. There's a particular piece of area of our property that they must have access to in order to drive the water and other things and get the final CO on the former Lambs building. So that's an agreement. I can have Scott follow up, or Frederick follow up with you and make sure that you have more information as it relates to that item. And then there's another piece related, probably to Portoff and Tanglewood Elementary. But I think that's about aluminum walkways. I don't believe that was the one in particular. You were interested in 6 and 7 and 8, which are about things with Veterans Park that give us the possibility and the utilities, conveyances, and areas that we need in order to bring those materials through and into our building in order to get a final CO.
Yeah, I was basically looking for a very simple explanation that tied the 3 of those things together, because I realize they're separate agreements, but they're all components of an arrangement we've made, and it would just be easy if someone could provide like a 1-sentence summary of those 3 together. But it doesn't have to be now. That's fine. It can just be in an email later on. That's okay.
More than happy to do that. One is an easement, the other is specifically for a fire line, and the other one is the authority for the water and utilities to come into the school. That is a very cursory overview. I will get Scott and Frederick to give you a more detailed update and provide it to the entire board.
Thank you.
Ms. Morgan, was that?
I think there was a 3rd one, but now I forgot to bring my list, and I can't remember what it is, so I will pass. Thank you.
It was regarding what she just
Go ahead, Ms.
Thank you. No, and I was just, my question on the Veterans Park items that are on here, like K-12. does that have any impact on our buildings or whatever? Is it just getting power and whatever to the area? Is it something specific for us? And you can answer that when you finish your...
That one I can't answer. The power and water related to the school building is on and working. We have a temporary CO. These agreements will allow us to move to a final CO. But I'll let Frederick and Scott get deeper into that with all of you, and we'll provide a written explanation as to those items as well as the ones that continue below at 12 and 13 with the Florida Government Utility Authority.
Okay, and Ms. Gaines, did you have another one?
This is to do with another area,
Yeah.
can I?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. On E2, that policy 1.20, this is just the final aspect, or I guess I'm just wondering why this was on here, since we are covering all kinds of other policies.
Yeah, this is-
Is this one of many, or?
Yeah, no, Ms. Gittens, I'll have Ms. Dupree Bruno answer that. That's in respects to, because of the fact that we're waiving the requirements because we have to have meetings and we have to have 3 misses, you're out. So, Ms. Dupree Bruno, will you please just, you can respond to that one rather.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with our ongoing Neola project or our conversion. This is specifically to give some latitude, some grace and compassion to those individuals that are volunteering as board advisory committee members, so that we are waiving the requirement, because the policy requires it, waiving the requirement to have a board advisory committee in October and November, and then starting up again in January, as well as the requirement to have first and second quarter reports. And then the policy says if you miss 3 meetings that you will be removed from the committee, so this waives this as well, given the circumstances that we have.
Okay, thank you.
And it's temporary. This is only for, until June 30th, 2023.
Right, and I just wanted that out there too for the public to make sure they understand that it is a temporary measure based on our circumstances now. Thank you.
Yeah, that is correct. I'm going to go to Ms. Giovanelli, then I'll come back to Ms. Morgan.
Thank you, because this was actually one of my questions. So they have the option of not meeting at all, is it what you're saying? Or they can Zoom, or?
They can Zoom now. They've been able to Zoom for a while. This is just waiving that requirement for October, November meeting. We don't have a meeting in December.
Okay, so what if the advisory committees wanted to meet or have a
We're
Zooms?
not all on internet yet, and may not be for a while.
The recommendation is to pause and hold, allow the district to get fully operational again, and then come back in January to restart.
Okay, so, but my concern is if they want to do that and they have the ability to do it, why would we just tell them, no, we're not doing it? I would let them make that. They usually vote and decide that, and let them decide that on their own. I could understand we have the grace and we have the policy that we're not going to, kick anybody off if they don't attend them and they don't do it. But I mean, why are we just saying no altogether when there might be communities or advisory committees that want to and have the ability to do so, to meet? So I hesitate to say absolutely no when we don't know what their abilities are at this point. I mean, I understand not holding their feet to the fire, but I don't understand saying absolutely no.
Mr. Bruno, can you, because part of this policy states that if you miss 3 meetings, that you will be taken off of the meetings. So without us knowing if they can meet or not meet because of communication, and they miss those 3 meetings, we would have to take them off based on the policy. Is that correct, Mr. Bruno?
So there's 3
If we're
things.
waiving, but if we're waiving this, that's why we're trying to waive this.
There's 3 things. One is the requirement per the policy 1.20 that you have meetings October and November. So that may be difficult for some committees.
Right.
Second, that if you miss 3 meetings, you will be removed from the committee. So this waiver addresses that as well. And then the last thing is the quarterly reports for the first and second quarter.
Did that explain, Ms. Stevenelli?
Right, but that's only for it's only for 60 days, right? I mean, it's just those 2 meetings.
No, that's correct.
That's correct. January, we start back fully operational.
In the same manner.
My concern is if you may have a little pushback from some of these committees that want to meet, and I don't see why we stop them, that's all. I mean, I understand if someone can't attend, and we're just not going to kick them off based on, us, doing this, waiving this policy at this time, but I think we should let the committees decide that, and if they don't have the participation, they don't have it. It's understandable. I just don't know why we just tell everybody we're not going to do it anymore, for 2 months, but, okay.
I have Ms. Morgan, and then I have Ms. Patrica.
I found my third item. It has to do with the Bonita Springs Elementary pre-construction. I know we've talked about this in the past. It's a historic building. We've talked about where does it fit into the long-term scheme of the district in terms of meeting needs for student stations in Bonita. I know that the last time we talked about this, it was to address specifically the loss of the office and some of the other facilities at Bonita as a result of this situation, a year or two ago. But I would like clarification that what we're doing will not inhibit our ability to take a look at this building long-term and make a determination about whether or not we're going to expand it, renovate it, et cetera. That was my concern when I saw this item, that we just be clear that this is a remedial step and not a step, and it doesn't remove the school from the project list long-term of some of our historical properties. Is that clear?
Dr. B?
Yes, Madam Chair. Again, I would like to make sure that I have an opportunity to confer with Scott. Scott and I have been having lots of other discussions. I believe I was prepped for this question several weeks ago, but I don't want to read into the record the wrong information. So we will make sure that question gets addressed and that we get you a response. And then if you have response to all board members, then if anybody has follow-up, please contact me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Patrica?
Just in terms of the advisory committee, I'd like to offer the perspective that it's not just about committee members, it's about staff as well and bandwidth. And Dr. Cupid McCoy is my staff liaison for DAC, and the last thing I want to ask her to do is take her focus off of the important work that she's doing to reopen schools in order to conduct the DAC meeting. So I just wanted to offer that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patrica. Was there any other, Ms. Giddens, did you have another? I thought I saw your hand.
I did, and I can't find it. I think it was about the athletic trainer, and it's kind of a generic question, actually, through the chair. I'd like to ask Ms. Patrica, are these types of agreements through the athletic association approved, or is there any connection?
No. Well, yeah, I think that would still go through Dr. Bernier. Okay. Did you find which you're speaking on?
It was about the one that it's G1. It's with Lee Health and Athletic Trainers and Services Agreement and all of that. So I didn't know, I know it's with the health providers, but I didn't know if we have to follow any type of, statewide, addendums as well, or if this goes through the athletic association. And the reason is when we've had all the issues that we have, like with the heat deal in football practices and all of that. So I wasn't sure if this fell under that as well.
Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Board Member Gittens, this is an agreement in order to ensure that we are in compliance with state regulation and rules regarding how we help support our athletes. Lee Health will be providing athletic trainers to help us make sure that we're compliant both with state law and with FHSAA requirements, but it does not require direct FHSAA approval. This is what we do to comply with the law to make sure we have athletic trainers at our events.
Thank you.
Ms. Patrica?
And I would say more from a FSBA perspective than an FHSAA perspective. We are incredibly lucky to have this partnership with Lee Health because many districts struggle to get an athletic trainer at events, at games, and are frequently, like we used to share an athletic trainer between schools. But Lee Health has really stepped up and put us in a position that is envied by many districts across the state.
Okay, are there any other questions? And if there, once you look at this again, if you do come up with things that you've just thought of, please send them to Ms. Schaefer, and then that way she can get them to Dr. Bernier, and he can send those out to all of us so that we're all aware of those questions. And so if I may then go ahead and move on to good of the order or comments, to see if anybody has any comments. I'll start with Ms. Morgan, please. Do you have any comments at this time?
I have none, thank you.
Thank you. Ms., what's your name? Ms. Vaughn?
Yes. I just wanted to reiterate a couple things, and I'm going to first of all reiterate my thanks to the staff that has been working tirelessly on all of this. I think most of you know me by now, and you know that I look at devil's advocate role sometimes, and that it doesn't hurt to have another set of questions, another set of ideas, and in the end, I will support whatever Dr. Bernier and his team come up with for the start date, because this is an exceptional team of leadership here, and I can see to say 100% improvement since almost 4 years ago when I first came on this board. I know mathematically you can't have more than 100%. So anyway, I'll leave it at 100%. That said, as a member of this board, it behooves me to express that I do have some misgivings about the October 17th reopening date, and I do have concerns about having adequate staff in the schools. I have concerns about adequate numbers of bus drivers, because, I know local government, local people even have been going out to the bus stops and removing debris as best they can, but any of the bus stops that even had, a bench or whatever, I'm sure most of those things aren't there anymore. So I worry about an issue we had before the storm, which is some of the kids not being picked up. I worry about not only the kids once they're in school, and I know it will be safe there because that's part of our criteria, but I worry about them getting to school. And it also makes me wonder, what if these things were put off for a week? Would those, the reunification data, would it change? Because to me, the more people we can have, the more staff members we can have when we open, the better off we're going to be. There's going to be a lot of, obviously, I want to say a lot, numerous moving pieces. And that's why I'm asking the question about what is that number? What is that reunification number that we can proceed? would it be significantly different if we had an extra week? I don't know. I don't have the wherewithal to do these surveys, and thus far you've done an excellent job. The school principals have done an excellent job. I think there's an excellent job with the shared school sites and many of the other things that have been worked out by the team. Don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing that, but again, I'm just going to come back to, as a board member, as somebody who worries and, let's say a bit of a person that likes all the ducks in a row, and I worry about this. And I would like to see us take a deep dive into what if it was another week. Because to me, if in another week we had 15% more people coming back, it would be one less change. And don't lecture me about the mental health of people and all of that. I had a major in counseling and a lot of psychology classes, and read a lot about all of that, so I don't need to be lectured about that. But I just wanted to put it out there to make it clear why I'm asking the questions I'm asking. And of course, I want the very best. I want to see this district open and show the community just what a stellar group of people are running the schools. And those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Swan. Ms. Gittens, please.
Well, first of all, I just want to say we've heard a lot of people talk about the traffic, and it is horrendous. And I don't know who dumped all the people on the road and where they came from, but everybody's out there all the time, day and night. But as I was coming in, I thought, ooh, and when we do open, we're talking about buses and more cars. So just strap on your helmets, everybody, and get ready for the wild ride. The last thing I wanted to say was about communication. The right and correct and true communication, which makes our ability to communicate, especially to our staff in the community, so important. A lot of the comments and issues that we've heard have been because of miscommunication. Because it's like playing the game telephone, and we whisper to one person, and by the time you get it down to the end. I was speaking to a lady at the clothing giveaway on Monday, and she said, well, I heard we have to come back on Thursday, and I'll do that if I have to, but we really have got a lot of damage. And I said, but you don't have to. I said, we have consistently said, if you can. She said to me, well, that she had gotten the information because she didn't have all of the other methods. She had gotten it second or third hand from someone. Well, if that someone is someone who really, is kind of not liking us for the moment, she could have gotten a negative response. That's why, if you have to print up flyers, and I'll take some and put it at the places where I go, and I'm sure everybody else would, we just have got to get the right and correct and true communication out to the public. And when we are faced with the situations we are, there's such a high tendency of getting the wrong information out at the wrong time, at the wrong place. So, and again, thank you everyone for all that you're doing, and that's it for now.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Ms. Patrica?
No, thank you.
Ms. Giovanelli?
I'll be quick. I hear what a lot of people are saying and so forth, but we are a community that we are going to rebuild, and we have to put our foot forward to start that rebuilding. And presently, we have many professionals that are already back at work and working. So we are a piece of that, of the community that needs to be back working as well. So individually, that's why I said it earlier, if you cannot come back to work, that, you know, we're there for you for that, and you've got to do what you got to do to get yourself in a better situation. And we have resources that the district is working to help our staff do that. But we already have a community that some didn't stop working. They worked right through the hurricane. So, I mean, we have to be vigilant of that as well. And parents are working and students are home doing nothing. I think my granddaughter wants to be back in school. She's ready. So I think we just have to look at the big picture, and each person has to look at their individual situation and do what's best for them. So I just want to really make that really clear. I have received a few messages that where principals have not been able to communicate with their staff, or their staff is not aware of what exactly is going on individually or their classroom and so forth. And so I think it's really important that they reach out to their principal and the vice versa, because there is apparently there is a communication breakdown somehow. And we want to do everything possible to make sure that that communication is being received and being given correctly as well. So if, you know, to any teachers, if you, and staff, if you have not heard from your principal, please reach out to them, and then, you know, reach out to administration. I think that's, you know, you be very vigilant of that. Some of them may not even be local. So I think that's really important that we find out where you are and how we can help you achieve whatever circumstances are surrounding your situation, because everybody's different, and we've talked about that today. So I just wanted to reiterate that really quick, that we have to think of the community as a whole, and we're a huge piece of that, of making the community whole. If our students are in school, our community's not whole. So thank you, Dr. Bernier, for trying to keep that piece moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Giovanelli. Ms. Fisher, please.
Yes, thank you. So the other day, Saturday, I went to Pine Island, and I would never have thought, by looking at what I saw, that I would hear Dr. Bernier say what he said today about the progress that has been made in just a few short days. The community has started to rebuild following this natural disaster. And I want to appreciate all of our staff, many of whom are parents and community members in other ways, who work with our leadership, who have done an excellent job of setting the tone to make things happen. And I just want to say that I think that some people, somebody said somebody will come back to work even though they're not ready. And if they're not ready, they may still be in survival mode. But oftentimes when you're in that mode, the best thing you can do is take that step forward and help someone else, because that helps you to heal. So I think that waiting any longer, I mean, it's going to be what it's going to be. And yes, the traffic is a problem. There are constantly, continuously changing variables and options. And that's going to be the case for months and months to come. So looking at the progress that we've made in 2 short weeks, looking at the resilience of our people, and don't underestimate our kids, because they will come back and they will be part of the healing and part of the picture, and they're going to respond beyond expectations. Kids are resilient, and they are our future. So as we move forward, let's just continue to come together and support one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher, for those words. I think everybody else has already said everything that needed to be said. We are here as the board. Well, I'm speaking for all of us right now. Sorry, guys, ladies. We are here, and if there's anything that we can do for you or myself, I mean, I know we're here and ready to do whatever we need to do. Dr. Bernier, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Pri-Bruno. Then Dr. B.
I have none, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. B.
Just echo the sentiments about grace and compassion again, not only to our school employees and our district employees and our support professionals, but also to our children. Parents need to understand that their situations are theirs, they're unique and they're individual, and right now there's grace and compassion related to students as well. Want to just make sure that people understand, I think our principals have done an excellent job of communicating with their teachers, but our principals have been put in a tough bind in the last 24 hours. They were ready to communicate. I think what staff is looking for is, am I coming back on Thursday or not? And our principals have been put on hold and lockdown. I'm the responsible party. Because we wanted to make sure that if they were going to host a meeting in their building, in a reunification meeting, the building was safe. So as soon as we get clarifications, we will communicate with you what buildings are safe, where staffs will be reunifying. We'll start giving you some of that data. I know some of you were disappointed last night when you got a message from Michael and it didn't have, these are the buildings opening. We just didn't have, we don't have all those boxes on that checklist completed for any one building. I suspect as we go out of here this afternoon, we'll have some ones that we can start sharing with you, start sharing with the community, and I'm looking forward to that. I want you to know that I do suspect the governor will be in town tomorrow. He is expected to have a noon press conference. He has asked members of the staff to be with him. So we have not yet determined the location on his behalf yet. And then my plan is still to communicate with the community again on Friday, and again on Thursday and Friday, opportunity to communicate again with the community as to the progress and how we're moving forward, and just appreciate again the call for patience, poise, patient, and professional. Those are what we're trying to be, and I do appreciate the differentiated opinions and the differences. I think it's what makes this organization healthy. And I will tell you that in my cabinet room, I'm really proud of them because they have not held back. They have pushed back, and I'm really, really impressed with the work that we're doing because the room is always smarter than any one individual. So I appreciate that.
That's brilliant. Okay, thank you, Dr. B. Seeing no other business to come before this board, this meeting is adjourned. And Mr. Pri-Bruno, the shade session will be
Superintendent's cabinet, Superintendent's conference room.
in his cabinet at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Chris.